Guys, it's now official, the Jujutsu Kaisen manga is really back. Last week I brought you a video talking about the new manga by the author of Jujutsu Kaisen called Muro. Along with the announcement, we got an official image of one of the protagonists of this new series, a slim man, apparently tall, wearing clothes that resembled those of a mage or sorcerer, holding the planet Earth in his hand. As soon as the image was revealed, a lot of people rushed to make edits or simply color the image, as if this character were the reincarnation of Satoru Gojo, or the reincarnation of Sukuna. Everyone with their own guess, and that's fine. And in fact, looking at the colorings people made, this character actually did resemble Gojo, or even Sukuna quite a bit. But since at that time there was no announcement about a sequel to the Jujutsu manga, everyone made those drawings and comparisons, just for fun, just to kill the nostalgia. No one really expected that the Jujutsu manga would actually return for real. But to our surprise, the Jujutsu Kaisen manga really is back after almost a year, with a sequel titled Jujutsu Kaisen Module. The manga was scheduled to be released this week, on September 7th, and we finally have chapter 1 complete, so we can talk about everything regarding this new sequel. We're going to talk about the grandchildren of Yuta and Maki, who are the new protagonists, right? And one of them has even inherited Maki's heavenly restriction. We're also going to discuss this whole story about white-haired aliens, with eye powers invading Earth just like in the Boruto manga, and much more in this video. Stick around until the end to understand everything about this new sequel, but not before smashing the like button with Sukuna's finger and hitting the subscribe button so you don't miss the upcoming videos about this manga sequel, and the third season of the Jujutsu Kaisen 100 anime. Let's go! As I mentioned in the previous video, at the end of the original Jujutsu series, many people speculated about the possibility of the manga getting a continuation. This continuation could have been a part 2 of the Jujutsu manga, still following the story of Itadori and the protagonists we already know, in a format very similar to what happened with the Chainsaw Man manga, which literally received a part 2. And the perfect hook for this would have been, as I told you, if Kenjaku's plan had worked, and the entire population of Japan had merged with Tenjin, resulting in a boost of cursed energy for everyone who was already a sorcerer, and everyone who wasn't a sorcerer would have become one too. Japan would enter a new era, made up 100% of Jujutsu sorcerers, and this whole new universe would open up a series of new possibilities that could be explored. It would have been a surprising ending, and would have created the perfect hook for an eventual continuation of the series. In this case, what happened at the end of the original series would have had a massive impact on the world, and would have given a sense of unity and continuity to the series. To this part 2, I explained all of this to you in more detail in the previous video, and in several others actually, throughout last year, and you'll see that a continuation like that would have been 1,000 times better than what we got in this new manga. Let's take it slow. In fact, I think even a Sukuna spin-off set in the Rameyan era, something a lot of people would love to see, would have been way better than Jujutsu Kaisen choosing to suddenly introduce aliens with eye powers into the story. So let's get into it. To start guys, there's been some confusion regarding the manga's name. Jujutsu Kaisen Module 3, Jujutsu Kaisen 3rd Module, 3 Module, Jujutsu Ken Modoro, but the official title of the manga seems to simply be Jujutsu Kaisen Module, which can also be pronounced in Japanese as Jujutsu Kaisen Muro. At first this is supposed to be a 6-month-long manga, but you never know, there's always the chance the publisher will decide to stretch the story a bit longer. As for the premise, the first chapter opens in the year 2086, with an aerial view of space close to Earth. A spaceship approaches, and inside we see beings with white hair and a third eye on their foreheads. One of them says, quote, "It seems that there exists a race of people in Japan who possess a power similar to ours. On this planet, they are known as Jujutsu sorcerers." Yeah guys, with all the potential this manga could have had, the sequel to Jujutsu Kaisen decided to copy Boruto. Now look, I'm not the biggest Naruto expert to argue about when exactly Kishimoto planned the introduction of aliens and all that into the Naruto universe. But the fact is, the impression I got as a casual fan doesn't stray too far from the majority. The whole Kaguya twist at the end of Naruto felt like something thrown in at the last minute, just so the Naruto manga could have a hook for a continuation. But even if that was a rushed decision, or at the very least executed hastily, at least that hook still happened within the Naruto manga. Kishimoto at least took the time to try and create a connection at the end of Naruto with the introduction of Kaguya and the Otsutsuki, so that all of that could be expanded upon in Boruto. But here in Jujutsu Kaisen, we never had even the slightest mention of the possibility of an alien race with advanced technology that also had powers similar to Jujutsu sorcerers. The most we ever got were sorcerers from outside of Japan. We know of course that sorcery is a phenomenon almost exclusive to Japan, something that was always just an excuse by the author, so he wouldn't have to expand sorcery around the entire world and could keep the story's scope limited to Japan. And that was fine. But even then, every now and then, exceptions appeared. sorcerers who weren't born in Japan. That at least opened the precedent that this power could manifest in other individuals, across the world, and even across the universe. But since Jujutsu never once mentioned even the mere possibility of alien sorcerers, this sudden expansion doesn't feel natural or organic at all. This was done in a totally arbitrary way, just thrown right in our faces. Boom! Now there's a race of Jujutsu aliens, and that's it, we just have to deal with it. On the very first page of the manga, it's explained that this extraterrestrial lifeform, which calls itself the people of Shimuria, arrived in their ship carrying around 50,000 of their kind, seeking protection as refugees. In this first chapter, we still don't know why they're refugees, and honestly, we understand very little about this race and their people. So later on, I still want to make a more detailed video just to talk about this whole aliens in Jujutsu issue and dive deeper into that discussion. But so we don't get stuck only on this topic, let's move on to the next one. Digging a bit deeper now, the story takes place about 70 years after the events against Ryomen Sukuna, and we follow the grandchildren of Yuta Okotsu and Maki Zenin. Back in the final chapter of Jujutsu, we had already seen their faces, and right away, literally at first glance, you could see how the boy looked just like Maki, while the girl looked just like Yuta. And this new manga reinforces that resemblance even more, showing how the girl, named Yuka, seems like a mix between Yuta and Rika. Not only does she look a lot like her grandfather, but even her name ties her closer to him. On the other hand, the boy named Tsurugi not only resembles his grandmother, but is also much closer to her in personality. Both Yuta and Maki do appear in this new manga, but in extremely brief moments right at the beginning of the story. In fact, we don't even get a clear panel focusing much on their faces, deliberately so, to avoid making us too attached to them. That's because they die in this very first chapter. The focus of this story is entirely on their grandchildren, so their appearance is just a quick nod to the original story and to help set up the personality and motivations of the two new protagonists. So with Yuta and Maki dead, the family legacy is passed on, and one legacy passed to Yuka was her grandfather's ring. This was the very same ring Yuta once used to summon Rika. In this new manga, we learn that the ring has now become a cursed object. Just to recap, cursed objects are items that contain the energy of sorcerers who have died. These objects serve to repel curses, and that's why Yuta chose to give the ring to his granddaughter to protect her. But cursed objects don't just repel curses, they can also contain special powers. A famous example is the prison realm, the cube that was used to seal Satoru Gojo. So it's very possible that this ring still holds some of Yuta's abilities. Who knows, maybe the ring even still contains Rika within it. And beyond that, we know cursed objects can be consumed by humans. And if compatibility exists, the sorcerer who created that object can actually reincarnate inside the new body. In other words, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point one of the grandchildren ends up swallowing that ring, and old Yuta makes a special return in this new manga. Anyway, Yuka accepts the ring as her gift, while Tsurugi accepts the fact that he didn't receive the ring as an inheritance. He realizes he doesn't actually need it, because he's already strong, so the ring should be used to protect his sister instead. And it's no coincidence that Yuta's grandson is strong, because he was born with none other than a heavenly restriction. Just like his grandmother Maki, Tsurugi was cursed with this condition, which means he has almost no cursed energy. Because of that, he was born with an extremely powerful physical body. Now, in Jujutsu, we never really got an explanation on whether heavenly restriction is hereditary or not. It happened with Toji Zenin, and then later with his niece Maki Zenin. So since Tsurugi is Maki's grandson, it would make sense for him to inherit this trait as well. But he would actually be the very first direct descendant in the family born with this condition. That's why it would be great if this new manga explained more clearly how the hereditary side of heavenly restriction actually works, because it really does seem to exist. Still, despite Tsurugi being stronger than his sister, his family decides that she should be the one to inherit Yuta's ring, not him. And of course, in the mind of a teenager, this basically means they're calling him weak. Honestly, this could have been the perfect chance for the manga to bring up memories of his grandmother Maki, or even Toji Zenin, both of whom suffered inside the clan for being born with heavenly restriction. But the manga barely shows Maki and doesn't even mention Toji. On top of that, the family doesn't even give Tsurugi a logical explanation as to why the ring went to his sister instead of him. His mother just says that was the decision of the Gojo family, and that his own will didn't matter. So right away, this mirrors the original manga. Yuta's will didn't matter. Itadori's will didn't matter. They just had to obey. And, let's be honest, carrying around a ring is way less problematic than carrying a demon inside your body and being destined to die at the end of the day. So when you look at what Yuta and Itadori had to go through, Yuta's grandson really didn't have much to complain about, just because people called him weak. But that's just reading between the lines. So with Tsurugi and Yuka now around 17 and 16 years old, they team up to deal with a kidnapping problem that has become a plague in Japan. It's explained that ever since the revelation of Jujutsu sorcerers to the world, a wave of kidnappings has begun. Sorcerers are being captured and used as sources of energy in other countries. And not just sorcerers, even non-sorcerers, especially children, are being abducted, since every human body contains at least trace amounts of cursed energy. And this is a point I really wish the manga had explored more. How exactly are these people being used as energy sources? We know sorcerers can generate things like fire, lightning, and other elements, but how can the cursed energy of ordinary humans, who don't have techniques or anything like that, be converted into other forms of energy? And honestly, since regular humans have such an insignificant amount of cursed energy, I seriously doubt this would even be a profitable business, like the manga tries to make it seem. Either way, Japanese people started being kidnapped, and the villain we meet in this chapter is one of those kidnappers. This kidnapper is a sorcerer who can use barrier techniques capable of confusing the trajectory of his targets, always guiding them to the exact spot he wants. Everyone who enters his barrier ends up following the same path, influenced by his technique, and is led to the same place. That's exactly what happens when a little boy enters his range. He's grabbed by a pair of giant hands and simply disappears. The same thing then happens to Tsurugi, who decides to chase after the boy and allows himself to get caught by the technique as well. But there's a condition. Only those with practically zero cursed energy can be caught by it. And it's at this moment that we discover Tsurugi was only captured because of his heavenly restriction. After both of them vanish, it's up to Yuka to track down their whereabouts. While Tsurugi is kept prisoner, the villain explains that the Japanese kidnapping business is about to collapse. He says Japanese people will soon start losing their value on the human trafficking market for one simple reason: the aliens are coming. A threat said to be on the same level as Sukuna himself. And I can't help but ask, how exactly does this guy know all of this while the sorcerers working for the government don't have a clue? But fine. According to him, once the aliens invade Japan, he believes a war of colonization will begin, and the Japanese won't be able to prove their worth anymore because they'll basically just get slaughtered. So the villain's plan is to sell off Tsurugi, along with a bunch of other children he's stockpiled, and cash out before everything falls apart. And look at the metaphor here. A Japanese man believes that once aliens, that is, outsiders, enter the country, the Japanese will start to lose their market value and a colonization war will begin. But at the same time, for him to keep exploiting Japanese people without destabilizing his business, he must prevent immigrants from entering the country. From there, Yuka and her brother get help from a sorcerer named Muro. This is the green-haired guy who shows up in the color spread of this chapter. He arrives on Earth, and somehow we have absolutely no idea how manages to infiltrate the sorcerer world and disguise himself as some sort of inspector from who knows where, claiming he came to oversee the siblings' mission. Tsurugi is obviously suspicious of him, since the guy looks nothing like an inspector, but they decide to push the mission forward anyway. And I suppose this Muro guy infiltrated in order to try and establish some kind of first contact, maybe even build some kind of friendship with the sorcerers. But it really would have been nice if we had actually seen how he managed to infiltrate everything and what his exact objective with this mission was. We also learn over the course of the chapter that Muro didn't exactly have the powerful aura we thought he did. On the color spread, he looked way more badass, but in reality he came off as pretty dumb the whole chapter. Naturally, because he doesn't know how things work on Earth. So he spends most of the chapter being the dumb character of the trio, the one who constantly has to ask questions, forcing someone else to explain everything both to him and to the reader as well. Because, you know, we're all dumb here too, right? At times he even gives off a bit of a Satoru Gojo vibe, especially because he tries to play the comic relief role for the trio, very similar to how Gojo often behaved. But unlike Gojo, who was the Satoru Gojo, Muro just spends the whole chapter being clueless, not understanding anything that's happening, and constantly falling behind. So yeah, he feels almost like a second-rate Gojo. In the end, they manage to resolve the kidnapping case. Yuka shows off a technique that simulates a dog's bite. Tsurugi uses his sword, a cursed tool that generates sparks. And Muro uses two abilities. The first allows Yuka to connect with her brother and locate him. And at the end of the chapter he finally opens his third eye, unleashing a kind of shockwave that knocks the villain unconscious. With that, the siblings discover that yes, the aliens really have arrived. So in this first chapter we had Yuta making a brief appearance, his grandchildren stepping up as protagonists, and what's left for Itadori, Gojo, and the rest of the gang. Just a single panel where they're shown only from behind. We don't even know if Itadori is still alive or not, but I've already talked too much. We'll continue this discussion in the next video. If you stayed until the end and enjoyed the video, and you want me to keep covering this Jujutsu sequel, which I obviously will either way, then great. Just don't forget to hit the like button, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the upcoming videos. And now, if you want to revisit the full battle between Satoru Gojo and Sukuna, or maybe Yuji Itadori vs Sukuna, just click on the videos appearing here on the screen. In the next video, we'll talk more about how aliens completely ruined the sequel to Jujutsu Kaisen and turn this manga into Naruto 2. Alright? See you next time. Bye.